Welcome to the One-Year Book of Mormon. A non-Mormon reads through the Book of Mormon. Mosiah, chapters 17 and 18. Chapter 17 overview. Abinadi is condemned to death. A young man named Alma believes the words of Abinadi and pleads for his life, but is unsuccessful and is also himself kicked out of the city and writes down Abinadi's words. Abinadi is burned at the stake and is also beaten with sticks while dying, and prophesies that the children of the people who do this to him will suffer the same or at least a similar fate as his. This seems a pretty straightforward story with nothing greatly remarkable as far as contradictions with the Bible or modern Mormonism, other than the problems that have already been mentioned many times before, such as that Abinadi declares that God will come down to earth as Jesus the Messiah, etc. The only noteworthy point is that verse 13 uses the word faggots, which in 1830 was simply sticks or a bundle of sticks. Of all the archaic words, though, that have been changed since the 1830 version into the modern version, you'd think that would be one, but it hasn't been, which is odd, especially considering the most common meaning of the word today. Moving into chapter 18, the chapter overview is that Alma preaches in private, baptizes himself and the other converts in the waters of Mormon, organizes a church, and ordains priests who teach the people. The king finds out about it, claims that Alma is organizing a rebellion against him, and sends his army against them. So the people leave, about 450 of them. Verse 4 says, "And it came to pass that as many as did believe him did go forth to a place which was called Mormon, having received its name from the king, being in the borders of the land, having been infested by times or at seasons by wild beasts." What? If I'm understanding this correctly, the king called this place by the name of Mormon because it was sometimes infested by wild beasts. That's what I'm reading anyway. So Mormon means infested by wild beasts? In verse 14, we see an interesting description of the first baptism, let me tell you what. It's similar enough to Christian baptisms by immersion, except the first time Alma baptizes himself along with another, a man named Helam, so that Alma goes under the water with Helam and they both come out. Subsequent baptisms are the standard one person gets immersed type, because Alma doesn't need to be baptized anymore. As an interesting side note, I think that the original baptisms of Joseph Smith and the early Mormons did not follow this example. That is, I do not think that Joseph Smith baptized himself and, say, Oliver Cowdery at the same time and then started baptizing everybody else. Instead, I think that Joseph Smith baptized Oliver Cowdery and then Oliver Cowdery baptized Joseph Smith again, or something like that. You would think that they would take this as their example of the first baptism of somebody, but I guess not. In verse 16, we're told that the number of people here baptized were in number about 204 souls. Let me repeat that again. It was about, and then an exact number, 204. Why not about 200? It's so weird to have a precise number given as if it were a round number. It just doesn't make sense. Verse 18 says that God gave Alma authority to ordain priests. So at least the Book of Mormon finally gives a reason for non-Levitical, non-Aaronic priests, hundreds of years after there have been non-Levitical priests. But it's almost said as an afterthought rather than as a major argument or a major point. There is no explanation or basis. It's just as if the author of the Book of Mormon didn't even know that it was problematic to have non-Levitical priests. However, in the Bible, whenever there is a change or an apparent change or an apparent contradiction, there is also an explanation. For example, animal sacrifice and circumcision no longer being required. The Bible actually goes into great detail on these points. So why wouldn't the Book of Mormon go into detail about the change from a Levitical priesthood only to allowing non-Levitical priests to be there? Verse 20 says, Yea, even he, that is Alma, commanded them, that is the newly ordained priests, that they should preach nothing, save it were repentance and faith on the Lord who hath redeemed his people. Except they were still supposed to be following the law, right? Inconsistency and contradiction. Verse 24 says, And he also commanded them that the priests which he had ordained should labor with their own hands for their support. Not only does this go against both the Old Testament, in which the priests were to be supported from the tithe by the people, and the New Testament, in which preachers, that is, those who minister the word, are to share in the material blessings of those who receive the word, but it also goes against the statement in just a few verses, that is verse 28, that the people were to give of their goods to the needy and to the priests who had need. If the priests were laboring like this verse says they were supposed to, how could they have need? Verse 27 says that those who have a lot should give a lot, while those who have little should give little. And those who have nothing or who stand in need should be the recipients of those who do have. Unfortunately, the modern LDS Church often ignores this and does not give to those who have not, but instead requires its members to forego their own needs in order to continue to tithe. There are many accounts of this from all sorts of people who are connected to the LDS Church, whether current members or former members or the children of current or former members. I've seen it said numerous times in many sorts of contexts, including active members who are defending their church's practice, saying that giving sacrificially was a good thing, to give to the church even when they themselves went hungry because they couldn't even buy food. The narrative continues by saying this was all done in secret in the borders of the land so that the king wouldn't find out. But he figured out that some people were going somewhere and had his servants spy on them. Why was the spying necessary when just a few chapters ago we are told that the king had spent a lot of money to build a high tower that allowed him to view the whole land? But I digress. The king then claims that Alma is fomenting rebellion, so he sends his army to destroy them. So the people, approximately 450 total, at least now Joseph Smith has picked a round number, they pack up their tents and go into the wilderness. Thinking about this, it makes no sense that the king's army would be somewhere far off so as to allow these citizens time to gather their belongings and leave. But then it also makes no sense that these city dwellers would all have tents in the first place.